by scholars who have questions, unanswered questions about how those buildings came down, and televised debates were set up with all expenses paid, and of course the people involved would have been highly respectful. It would have been a very civil forum, and the people responsible for the production of those official documents refused to participate. And the documents have been shredded. For example, by your colleague David Ray Griffin, his book on WTC7, which I imagine you're familiar with. Very, very effectively shreds the NIST report on WTC7. They've been challenged by requests for correction and have refused to provide any corrections. And so the situation we're in is that the government is stonewalling. The 9/11 Commission report was a cover-up, a whitewash, and the government is stonewalling, and then the implication then must be that they have something to hide.
I mean, I do agree with you that you did not have a thorough 9/11 debate in the United States, because this debate was basically stopped. You had one version which was being presented by the Bush administration to the world. It was the version which said Osama bin Laden is responsible. We all know this story. And then when you had other people stepping forward who presented a different perspective, who said, no, we think that criminal elements within the Secret Service of the U.S. or within the Special Forces of the U.S. have manipulated the terrorist attacks in one way or another, then this second version of this second view of the whole history was suppressed and is being suppressed until today. And what I'm saying as a historian is that this is not acceptable. You should, in the sense of freedom of speech, you should have the possibility that each and every scholar comes forward with his best data and then let the scholars battle it out publicly. I mean, that is science. That's what we do. Science is not, if you go to North Korea, obviously, you have the government who says, we are a wonderful country and, we have nobody dying from famine. And then if the scholars want to say something, if they want to say, Jesus, you got to be kidding, we have loads of people dying from famine every year, they can't say it. They can't say it, but that's North Korea, okay? That's a totalitarian country. Or take China. You take China and you see one who wins the Nobel Prize, Liu Jiabao. He can't even, go to the ceremony and receive the Nobel Prize. He only asked for more democracy in China, but he couldn't, he couldn't go to get the prize because he's in prison. But then everybody goes, okay, that's China. It's just one party which rules, and you don't have freedom of speech really in China. But if we look to the United States, there's still this, let's call it hope that the U.S. is a democracy, or this conviction that actually within the democracy you would have a representation of all the voices which are in the discourse. And what I basically see is that you have a division in the United States media. You have the television, which is dominated really by the surprise theory on 9/11. You have then the internet, where you have a lot of people, especially this page, which I once looked at to Patriots Question 9/11, where you a lot of Americans who say, we've been lied to and we don't accept it. So you have many courageous people in the United States, but I don't see them getting a lot of mainstream media attention. So really it is a very one-sided debate. Don't take this personally, but I assume, and I have no clue on your radio, but I assume that it's a rather small network, a radio station which tries to maneuver through the mass media dominance. And
absolutely, yes, that's correct.
I haven't researched your radio. I didn't have the time, but I perceive that it is only in very small corners of the society that you have this debate. And I'm only saying this is very sad. It is not my intention to say that one group is right and the other group is wrong, and that they should kill each other until the one is left. I think we should have a civilized debate about facts. That's the only thing I ask for, and that is the scientific tradition.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I agree that it would be nice if everyone would come forth and be able to speak on an even footing, on an equal footing. But of course, here at Resistance Radio, we're a suppressed minority of questioners of what the mainstream media is putting out. One of the questions we've been pondering quite a lot on Resistance Radio over the last few weeks have been the WikiLeaks revelations, and I understand that this is a subject of interest to yourself as well. What do you think about the recent WikiLeaks revelations and the role that they're playing in, say, whether they're advancing, say, the purposes of the war on terrorism, or whether they're actually, providing critical information to undermine the war on terrorism narrative?
It is a very interesting debate which is going on WikiLeaks. We also have this debate here in Europe, and I did quite a few interviews here on national Swiss radio and on newspapers, because WikiLeaks is something new. You know, people don't know it. First of all, they confuse it with Wikipedia, the encyclopedia. That's the first thing. So we have to get rid of that confusion. I know that your listeners, obviously, which seems to be very educated, they don't confuse these two, but just from the name, they confuse it. And then if you go on and explain that WikiLeaks is a whistleblower platform, people want to know, what is that, a whistleblower? And then I explain and, everything, and I say, it's a very good thing to have whistleblowers. We need whistleblowers who actually tell us about corruption in international politics and also in business, if you want. But then the question really is, Julian Assange has been questioned whether he's a dangerous man, and then he said, no, I'm not a dangerous man. The men who start war and fight wars and attack other countries, these are dangerous men. We have to stop them. And then what I've seen is that there's something like a world peace movement, if you want to call it. They then thought, okay, Julian Assange is our savior. He's going to stop all the wars. And I think that is a bit problematic to see WikiLeaks in such an easy way, because WikiLeaks provides interesting information, no doubt, but also this information can be used to, for instance, start propaganda for a new war. For instance, it can start to fuel the idea that it is necessary to attack and bomb Iran due to the question of atomic missiles. And to make this clear, I personally don't think that it would be right to attack Iran. I don't think it's right to attack and bomb any country for that matter. But I've seen that, for instance, the New York Times has twisted the WikiLeaks story very much in the direction of an Iran war story. And I'm just, asking people to read WikiLeaks and to remain open and interested in this whole wiki thing. I think it's a very interesting thing, but I also tell them that it's not so easy to get rid of war propaganda, and it's not so easy to get rid of wars. We still live in a world where there are some groups who just try to prepare a new war, and that's just going on, and Goebbels did it in the Third Reich in Germany, and I studied his techniques very closely, and it's always the same. You just have to spread fear, discredit somebody, split two groups, and then say the others are less than human, and then start bombing them, really. So,
well, I agree with you.
We have to remain vigilant and just say no to violence. That is a very central thing. If somebody asks, that's just what I say as a historian who studied a lot of violence and corruption. I'm saying it's impossible to find out the truth on the newest terrorist attack, or the truth on who are the whistleblowers feeding WikiLeaks. But it's always possible to say, we try to be informed, and we're not going to be those who scream for, yes, another war, and yes, let's kill them all. This is just madness, and we should not engage in this madness.
Well, let me ask you one final question. As a scholar of Operation Gladio, as we go forward, we see considerable resistance in Europe right now to the imposition of austerity, in various different forms in various countries. But we've had major street demonstrations in Greece and France and England and Ireland, and that's a short list. And given that these structures which control the population through fear have not clearly been destroyed, they could still exist. If we were to see in the coming weeks and months of contestation over the increasingly dire economic situation in Europe, if we were to see major terrorist attacks blamed on the demonstrators in the street, what would your response be? How would you view mainstream news media that claim that such attacks were the acts of the demonstrators themselves? Would you be suspicious about that?
Yes, I would always be suspicious if a terrorist attack happens. As a first systematic approach, I would say we have to investigate whether really it was the claimed group, in this case the demonstrators, or whether B, it was a false flag attack. So secret services or just groups who carried out the attack in order to discredit the demonstrators. That is always the first question, and that is a systematic approach to an investigation of a terrorist attack. But as you see, in the normal case, you just have one road which is being followed, and the question of is this manipulated terrorism does not even make the front line, although it is something which historians can prove that that manipulated terrorism happens. We, for instance, had the French Secret Service in 1985. They went to New Zealand because Greenpeace, this international ecological organization, Greenpeace had its ship in New Zealand. They wanted to prevent the French from carrying out atomic bombings and atomic tests in the Pacific. So they just went with their ship, Rainbow Warrior, right into those zones where the atomic explosions took place. So the French
have about 30. We just have about 30 seconds left, Daniel.
What I want to say, then the French Secret Service blew up that ship and killed the people on board. We know that terrorism is sometimes manipulated, and we just should remain very, very vigilant. So all the best and good wishes to the United States. Take care.
Well, thank you so much for your marvelous research, Daniel. Your book is fantastic. I learned so much reading it. It's a wonderful book, and I'm very grateful to you for coming on the show, and I hope to talk to you again.
Okay, bye-bye.